Hello, welcome to another episode of the Mindful Muscle Podcast. My name is Gio with my fabulous co-host, Jodi. How are you today?
I'm great. And if you're new here, welcome. Gio and I are two individuals who went on health and wellness journeys and collectively have lost and maintained a 140-pound weight loss. This podcast really is for anybody, but we primarily focus on the beginner because Gio and I have been there and we want to show the beginner that it is possible with sustainable methods. If you are new on your journey, be sure to subscribe and follow us so we can help you along the way.
Yes, indeed. That's what it is, helping people, because we know how hard it was for us to navigate this on our own. And so we're here to help people. Our next guest is Andrew Marmont, the father, men's health expert, and founder of T30 Golf. Growing up in a sports-obsessed New Zealand, he aspired to be a rugby league commentator. He followed his dream and had a successful career in sports media. But at the age of 36, he suffered mental and physical health issues, including anxiety, nightmares, and weight gain, before overcoming adversity through speed golf. Let's welcome our next guest, Andrew. How are you today?
Hey Gio, hey Jodi, I'm really well, thank you. Very well, despite the early morning here in Melbourne.
Yes, Melbourne, Australia. You're about our third guest from the land down under. I appreciate all of you taking your time to wake up early or late or whatever it is over there. Tell us a little bit. Let's go about you were a league commentator, but then you went through this personal hardship. How did you end up there? And what was it like before we talk about how you came out of it?
Yeah, so before kids came along, I was, like a lot of us, very significance focused. So I put a lot of effort into career. I spent a lot of time with my beautiful wife, and that was my pure focus. And I had some time for me, so I put effort into gym and working out. I played a lot of cricket. My life was pretty straightforward. But then as soon as kids come along, your view changes. For me, as someone who is a bit of a perfectionist or responsible, I felt like I needed to put 110% into being a great dad, a great husband. I had a small business that I was running, so I was working lots of hours on that. As a result, there was nothing left for me, which I think we can all relate to. We just think that the best thing is to put everything into other people and other things, but we neglect ourselves.
That is so important because in both my story and Jodi's, it was once we started prioritizing our health was when we realized you can prioritize other things in their proper sphere. If you're not around because you neglected your health, then who's going to take care of the kids and the wife? And so that's important. What were some of the mental aspects that you were struggling with? We mentioned anxiety in your biography, but how did that manifest itself in your life?
When I think about it, it was really a state of mind. There's a bit of sleep deprivation at the start when young kids there. But the fact remains that at that stage it was a business owner, so immediately your stress goes above the norm, because if you're an employee, you don't have those financial responsibilities. I was also managing a team of 5, and there's a sales aspect and delivery. So all these things you were juggling. It was really about feeling like there was an invisible wall just start to close in, and you're not sure. You can see it. It's not there physically, but you can see how things starting to close in, and you can run as fast as you can, but you can't actually get yourself out. I thought the answer was to pump more into work and not feel guilty by spending as much time as possible with family. I was just trying to keep myself busy, essentially. Yeah, mentally it was the feeling of not so much depression, but a hint of just feeling flat and trying to keep my spirits up, and knew that there was something wrong, as in there was something that was not quite right, even though there was this beautiful new life moment and experience I was going through. Things needed to change, but I just wasn't sure what the answer was.
I experienced something similar, and I called it hyper burnout. I kept myself so busy thinking if I just do a little bit more, it would all fall into place. But I kept adding more and more, and then it just became doing everything by rote, where there's no emotion behind any of it.
Mm,
And it was
mm.
just do more, felt like a mouse in a rat race. And finally, COVID hit and a lot of things hit. And it allowed me to recenter my life, including my health.
Yeah, how old were your kids when you realized something's gotta change, this isn't working?
Probably 8 months, Jody. 8 months of it was probably at the time where I felt like I needed to do something about this because it wasn't healthy. You had all these invisible forces pulling you. I thought that I need to take control here. I need to do something different.
Mm,
And as someone who spent most of my life appreciating fitness and health, keeping myself fit and healthy, that was so important to me. But for the first time in my life, I purely neglected it because I thought that I felt guilty and I felt like that was the way that I needed to be. I needed to be fully present. There's a reason why when we get onto a plane, the airline staff, they always say, put on your mask
mhm,
first in the event of
mhm.
emergency before you help anyone else. It's so true here as well. You've got to fill your own cup before you can help others.
That I use that analogy with my children all the time. Daddy, I'm hungry. I'll make your food when I'm done eating.
Good on you.
Because when I called you to come eat, you didn't want to come eat. So now that I'm eating, let me finish and then I'll take care of you, because you have to instill that. You can't give from an empty cup. Let's just put
No.
it that way. And so, what began the turnaround? And how did it affect your family before we go there?
I think they probably didn't say much. Not that my little boy could anyway.
Hmm.
It was all me. Like, you can see that you're doing everything you can. And for reality, a lot of people, particularly a lot of the dads that I speak to in our local dads group,
Hmm.
they all work. They all keep working. So it's not
Hmm.
like it's a special case or anything. But I just think it was more because responsibility is so high on my characteristic traits. That means naturally that I'm going to overextend because I feel responsible.
Hmm.
So it was almost realizing those were the things that I was taking in. There were other ways that I could contribute. It just took me a long time to get there. I used to play, I got back into golf again.
Hmm.
And for a few years, I was seeing an exercise physiologist called Ben. He was helping me with my mobility
Hmm.
for golf and strengthening some sort of key areas. And on an email he sent to me, he said that he played in the 2016 World Championships of Speed Golf in New York. He might have casually mentioned that he played golf.
Hmm.
So I said to him, "What do you mean the speed golf? I've been playing golf since I was 13. I've never heard of it." Anyway, he said, "Yeah, look, we'll take you out." So next Thursday, he took me out. It was a 6 a.m. tee time at our local course here in Oakley. The sun was just starting to peek through from the clouds. It was cool in the air. He said, "Look, take 4 clubs and some running shoes and a positive attitude and some curiosity." I went, "Okay, fine." I did. We ran around the course while swinging shots. We were done in 25 minutes.
Hmm.
And it was the most freeing, exhilarating experience that I've had. Running is a great way to, or any exercises brings off endorphins. It makes you feel
Hmm.
good, especially afterwards. Maybe not during, but afterwards, it makes you feel good. And it was the nature, the birds, all the things that I love about golf anyway. And more so, it was also the social connection. So the conversation that I had with Ben,
Hmm.
it was not about golf at all because there's no time when you're jogging your way through anyway. Um, he's a much better golfer than me. So
Hmm.
in golfing terms, I think he's off a +1 to my sort of 18. So it's like Tiger Woods playing your local park player
Hmm.
kind of
Hmm.
thing. I'm giving him a bit of credit there. I'll tell him I referred him to Tiger Woods. But for me, it was a chance to do something for myself, prioritize some self care. And the best thing was, I got home at 6:45. My family was still sleeping. I had a big grin on my face,
Hmm.
sweating. And I thought, you know what? I have given myself the gift of self care, something that I love doing that brings me joy, that gives me comfort. And I don't have to feel guilty because it's still during work and family time. So that was really the key reason to start this, is because I had that moment of clarity And someone, it always takes someone, I think, someone
Hmm.
or something to encourage you to do something or act in a certain way and break the circuit. I love doing that. And that was the start of rediscovering fun and fitness again.
I'm a golfer, as I mentioned. I'm a 5 handicap, by the way. At my lowest, I was a 5 handicap. Having not played this year, who knows where I'm at. But I regularly, even when I take time off, I'm regularly shoot low 80s, high 70s. Although I've broken par 6 times. That being said, what a lot of people don't understand about golf is that if you're in a beautiful golf course early in the morning, I've been at golf courses where deers are walking with you, right? You enjoy the nature. There's no traffic. The etiquette says you're not on your cell phone, right? There's no outside noise. It's just you and a friend. A lot of times I've played by myself, and you do get that mental clarity. It's a walk in the park. A lot of people don't know that a round of golf, regular golf, may take 3 to 4 hours. You're only swinging the club maybe like 3 minutes. The rest of it is just enjoying nature and getting frustrated because you didn't put that stupid ball in the hole. When you add the endorphins of running, that had to be, like you said, that moment of clarity. How long before that stuck and became a habit?
Probably about 4 weeks,
Mm-hmm.
because the first time I did it, I struggled big time, certainly with the running. It was probably about 2.5 kilometers. So it wasn't a big run. You're not swinging the club for a lot of that, but it was more the constant pace of jogging. And as
Yeah.
someone who didn't prioritize health and fitness for a while, that was quite tough to get used to. But once I realized that if you can do a good warm up properly, if you can start to get some miles in your legs,
Mm-hmm.
then the golf is actually much easier. So yeah, it took me a few weeks to get in the zone. Obviously, having Ben there to help me as a constant presence was also easy, but it wasn't long before I started to do it myself when Ben wasn't free or he was
Mm-hmm.
working and things like that.
When did you put that mental anxiety episode behind you where you felt,
Mm.
yes, I actually have turned the tide and I'm most of the time in a better place?
I think there was a combination of a few factors, Gio. At that stage, I was still running my business, and I had that
Mm-hmm.
business for almost 5 years. And so later the next year, so we're talking now 2023, I made a decision to sell my business and become primary carer for my boy.
Mm.
My wife could go back to work. That was such a freeing moment because I felt like that was also part of the anxiety in terms of being wrapped up into so many other areas, getting pulled different ways, especially if it's a small business and there's a lot of reliance on you. I realized they call it a low paying job in some ways. I had 5 team
Mm.
members who became
Mm-hmm.
3, I think, at that stage. So once I decided to make that decision, and it was like a complete break because I realized that I could focus on me again. I could focus on getting myself healthy. And I think also that sense of contribution. This is what's best for the family right now. It was to have that quality time and be there. That was what I needed. And I threw in the golf and speed golf. That was my medicine. I think part of it is gratitude as well. When you're in it, it can be hard. But I think back to Father's Day that year, my wife gave me a book, a diary called One Memory a Day 5-year diary. It
Mm-hmm.
encouraged you to write down one memory or one thought each day across 5 years. So things like that, where at the end of the day, you might write down a funny thing or
Mm-hmm.
something that was something like you ran and gave me a hug when we finished daycare, or
Mm-hmm.
you started singing this funny song. So that sense of just being grateful for what you have was the other part of it. And I think lastly, I saw a psychologist
Mm-hmm.
because I realized that when I started having these nightmares, it was all centered to do with the baby. So I started seeing these nightmares as a psychologist, and basically she said, "Look, it's totally normal. It will pass," and it did pass. But I kept seeing her because I realized that she was like a sounding board. I called her a mental skills coach. I'm not sure she signed up for that kind of term, but it's almost like a reflection back when you're deep in those sorts of things and you like to reflect back on what's going on and get some sort of clarity. So that was really beneficial for me, is just to have a space where you could share, this is what I'm feeling, why am I feeling that way, how can I regulate my emotions better, and then obviously that then translates into looking after yourself with the health and the fitness and all those other good things that you need for a happy and fulfilling life overall. So that really helped too.
Mm-hmm.
Now, speed golf introduced you to the importance of self care and taking time for yourself. But how did that translate to you going on to helping over 650 dads?
Great question, Jodi. When my son was about 6 months old, I was having a conversation with our maternal child health nurse who checks in on the baby and the family. And she gave me a flyer and said, here's your local dads group. So here in Australia, we have mums groups, so mums can attend, and it might be the same in the US.
Nah, they
Whereas,
don't care about people in the US. No, they do have some, but it's not as pronounced as it would be in Australia.
okay, so I think this local dads group, I thought that's an interesting idea. Dads catching up. I reached out and connected with the local group, and it turns out it's a charity organization that helps dads stay connected and connect with other dads during the early stages of being a dad. I reached out to them, and with a couple of other people, we reinvigorated our local group. Over the course of the next sort of couple of years, we organize regular catch ups with other dads and events. We get to share experiences, what's going on, and get to know each other, bring our kids along the way. So I took a leadership role there, and that was really great for me to understand a little bit more about what other dads are going through, different stages, different ages. So that was part of it.
Hmm. So,
And
what would you say is the common thread you would find in fathers of newborn kids? And what was the mental theme, and how did fitness play a role, if any?
I think a key theme, Gio, was a lot of them go back to work straight away.
Mm.
So unless they're working for a big corporate organization, they tend to go back to work. They might have a couple of weeks off, and then it's back to work full time. As a result, it's the weekends where the main time are with the baby. And as a result, there's all these things around guilt, knowing they're there, but they're not sure how much they can do. In terms of fitness came along, I noticed that some of these dads who looked like they were enjoying it a bit more had conversations earlier with their partners around not feeling guilty about taking time out for fitness or
Mm-hmm.
self-care, and how they can manage that themselves, and what are the signs that maybe they need to have that time. It's basically really around having great communication. You have to be able to communicate and say, hey, you know what, I'd love to go down and just go for a jog, or I just want to do a quick T25 outside. Shout out to
Mm-hmm.
Sean T. So I think those sorts of things are important, is just to communicate and notice when things need to happen, and then have some time. Your partner or whoever's around that family unit will definitely notice that, because you've made time for yourself, you come back more refreshed and more
Mm-hmm.
energized, and you have more to give.
I'm a minister by trade, and in the Bible, newlyweds were given a whole year off. So obviously, you had to farm your land, but they couldn't go to war. They couldn't do anything. And I think it's part of that. Like you said, imagine a new dad who's excited about becoming a father and has to go back to work right away. On the
Yeah.
weekends, when quote unquote he should be spending time with the kids, that was usually when he had time to exercise or catch up with his buddies. And so, how do you balance that? Can be definitely anxiety producing. And that's why prioritizing your own personal health has to be important. But you have to learn how to do that without neglecting the rest either. I could see how without help, without guidance, that can be a tricky spot. Is that something you've seen in the fathers?
Yeah, absolutely. When thinking about how they approached their journey, each one of them had different life experience that they took into being a dad. And the ones that I could see were a bit more aware of things, they still managed to do, whether it was social sport or they managed to uh, at least get out for 2 times a week, that they would do something exercise related. And it's that's the base of all this, is giving yourself permission for self care. It all adds up. It constantly stacks on top of each other in a good way.
I know mom guilt is very common where a lot of moms feel guilty about taking time for themselves. I don't usually hear about dad guilt, but I'm wondering if it's something men are struggling with silently and not talking about enough. This is a conversation that needs to happen for us to take care of ourselves so we can give our family the best version of ourselves.
That's a great point, Jodi. Dad guilt is something that is unseen, unspoken about, but it definitely is there.
Hmm.
And the reason why men don't talk about it is because we're men. We don't need to talk
Yes.
about that stuff. Why, what's the point of talking about it? Because we'd rather just struggle in silence and
Yeah.
be like Batman or someone. The more we can talk about guilt, because as soon as you take care of a loved one, and it doesn't have to be a baby, it could be an elderly parent, or it could
Hmm.
be someone in your family, or a really good friend, and you're suddenly in that carer's role, guilt is going to be there. And talking about it makes it seem normal and allows you to also work your way through that. So yes, mum guilt is definitely there, because mums traditionally take the majority of that role for the first 12 months. That was definitely the case for me. It was more about the idea of what what are the things that are on your mind now, and why are you feeling guilty.
Hmm.
It could simply
Mhm.
be as simple as, you're doing all the work, so I feel guilty if I want to step away for a few minutes. But if I don't verbalize that, then my partner's not a mind reader. I'm not going to get resentful. Why should I get resentful if I'm not talking about it? I think it's a skill a lot of guys need to learn, how to communicate and actually say what's on their mind in a helpful dialogue kind of way. Because the easy thing to do is just go into your shell. And again, I've been there, and I still, something that I work on a lot is to be able to share and at least open up a chain of dialogue. So, dads, if you're out there feeling guilty, it's normal. Please, I encourage you to talk about it, whether it's with your mates first, but definitely with your partner. It'll do you a world of good.
They say communication is the key to life. So tell me about this T30 Golf. What is it exactly, and how'd you come about founding T30 Golf?
T30 Golf is a golf networking group for dads to help them play, connect, and strengthen their overall health. It came about when I went through this journey of rediscovering fun, fitness, and social connection through speed golf. I felt there were a lot of dads out there that could benefit from an activity where they get to play golf without sacrificing work or family time.
Hmm.
So when I remember speaking to my dad a few months ago, and he told me something that he hadn't shared before. He said he gave up golf for 7 years
Mercy.
after after I came along and my sister did, because he thought that was the thing to do. He wanted to prioritize us kids. And the people, when I started speaking to, particularly in the dads group, the dads that had older kids, the guys that I met in the gym, and they told me things like, "Oh, as soon as my son hit 10 years old, then I felt like it gave me, I could get back into golf," for example, because golf is something that has a stigma of 5 or 6 hours on the weekend.
Yes.
They call them golf widows.
Hmm.
And I think that I felt so strongly in that, because it's so important to have your daily mental health plan where you have 3 or 5 activities that give you joy or comfort. That's something that I prioritize each day, and I can just pick on 1 or 2 of those if I need. For me, golf was such a great example of an activity that gave me so much joy and comfort. Why does it have to be that we have to wait for so long to play again? And if we are also someone who enjoys and prioritizes our own health and fitness, then maybe there's a way to use golf as the tool. have social connection and keep those bonds really strong and build friendships that are going to endure for the next 20 or 30 years. And that was really the idea of T30 Golf. You can play golf in 30 minutes in a team. It's like you hit and I hit, and we go around the course. And then afterwards, we have a chat about how's our health going at the moment. And for me, that's really part of it, is if we can build deeper connections with other, initially it's a dad's related group, because that's where I'm at right now. But that's the idea of this T30. Get your golf in without sacrificing work or family.
Let me share with you a text conversation I just had this Sunday with the guy who got me into golf back in the 90s. I send him a picture of how snooty owners of Scotty Cameron putters are, right? It was a joke. And he says, I've been playing a bunch lately and I'm getting the bug to start playing more again. He asked me, have you played recently? I replied, I haven't played at all this year. I'm dying to get out, but with a 963-year-old, it's tough. Listen to what he said based on what you just said. He goes, I have a 14 and 16-year-old now. That's why I'm starting to play a little bit more again. I get it. Because when I didn't have any kids and his kids were smaller, I was playing 3 times a week and he's, man, I can't get out. Now his kids are older, he's playing more, but I know now how he felt because, you know, with a 9, 6, and 3-year-old, and my wife sold her business, but she's still working from home and she's a medical doctor. So I can't just leave her with 3 kids while she's trying to pay attention to clients over telemedicine. I don't want it to go 7 years. I really enjoy golf because I live in Texas. It's the only green area in Texas. With all the heat, everything else is burnt. And so golf courses, it's the only nature you really get to enjoy. And so I think this episode has been great, not just for me, but hopefully the listeners, that men have to take care of their priorities. Part of their priorities is not only your family and your work, but your own mental sanity. And it's been a good refresher.
Are you able to share any success stories with some dads that you've helped along the way?
We had a test group of dad golfers, Jodi, in May. And this is before the concept was really fully formed in my head. And I said, hey guys, come along. This is a new concept. And T30 Golf, I put a small price on it just to cover my costs. They all knew me, but they didn't know each other. So I got them to fill in a form, and it asked some questions about them as a human being. What was their favorite superhero growing up? What
Batman.
Was you and I, Gio.
I just don't have the billions of dollars. Otherwise, I'd be Batman.
So I think things like that were designed to ask them about themselves. So if money was no object, what would they do with their life? What's something that you don't share with many people? And then I get them to rate their mental health. Good, average, not so good. So we get a picture of who they are. And then I matched them up based on their values and interests. Then I sent them an email saying, hey, Gio, you're playing with Todd. This is a bit about Todd, and it was a paragraph about some of these questions. And these are who else will be there, John and Larry. So they knew who they were playing with before they came. They knew a bit about what to expect. And they ran around, they did the golf. We had a chat afterwards. A question, the theme for each event will be, so for this one it was, what makes a content life for you? What goes into having a content life? They talked about self-care, making time for themselves, quality family time, how before baby life was all about work, after baby it's all about the quality time, all those sorts of things. But the feedback and some of the reasons why I know it's going to do a lot of good is because a couple of them said we bonded. That's a strong word, particularly for a guy to say. We shared some things. I could see the connection was there. With a couple of others, there was a sort of dialogue they had around golf. Like, for example, there's a book called Going on a Bear Hunt, which is a classic kids book. There's a family they go through and they try and catch a bear, right? But part of it is they go through all these conditions to get there. They have to go through grass and it's very long. We can't go around it. We've got to go through it. They were joking because there were dads that in times where the ball would be under a rock. I'm like, we're going on a bear hunt. We can't go through it. We have to go
Yeah.
under it. That sort of stuff for me was just great. And I knew at that point there was something that needed to be pursued with. So yeah, that was really and then some of those guys reached out again and said, hey, when are we doing this again? We've started to build a group who we've got a couple of events in October and then November to get started with, and some cool sponsors to help out with all these things. It just takes the community. You develop the community, they tell their friends, and that's how things like this start. A bit like the dad's group concept for golf.
That's how Jodi and I met. We have since met physically, but we met in a fitness group called Fitbod, which is an app we use. The community there is great. Well, how can people get in contact with you? What's the best way to reach out to you if people are listening down under and they want to be part of this men's group? What's the best way to reach you?
On LinkedIn, search for Andrew Marmont, and online, all our handles and our website is T30 Golf, so TE30golf.au, or on all the social media channels. Yeah,
Okay.
it'd be great to have a chat to anyone who was interested.
Say there's somebody who's about to become a dad and they're listening to you. Give them a nugget that no matter what, you still have to take care of yourself. You can't pour from an empty cup.
I think the one bit of advice that comes to me is something that a friend shared when we were on the golf course. He said about his partner. He said some advice that someone gave him was that always remember who you loved first. So that was, in other words, never forget that your partner is also really important to this from a fitness point of view or a health point of view. You don't beat yourself up if you can't do 5 days a week. Maybe it's 10 minutes a day for yourself. Like what your health and fitness looks like now, maybe for the first 3 months, 6 months, do what you can, make it achievable, even if you don't hit everything all the time. Just do something, I think. Give yourself some time to get out, even if it's just being in nature and having a walk around the block. That will do you a lot of good for your own self. And don't feel guilty. Have that conversation with your partner saying, look, we both need to prioritize these things.
That's so important. I think that's the missing key I see in a lot of people. It may not be verbalized directly that it's guilt, but they don't put themselves first and their lives around them are still crumbling. If you have physical health and mental clarity, then you can properly prioritize everybody else and everybody wins. If you let yourself go, like the plane illustration, if you don't put on that mask first, you're useless to everybody else. Men, listen up. This was an excellent episode for mental health. Prioritize your health and you will be fulfilling what you've been called to do, is to be a pleasant support for your children and your wife. Thank you, Andrew. Appreciate it.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.
Okay. Until next time on the Mindful Muscle podcast, thank you very much and be blessed.